You have to despair about politics at times, don't you? I mean, politics is supposed to deal with the big issues. It's often our only hope to resolve the big issues, but all too often it just descends into partisan politics and it gets in the way. Surely no one needs reminding in this country about the law and order issues, the social issues, the youth crime issues and the child sexual abuse issues that are gripping the Northern Territory. The Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney encountered this firsthand on Friday night when an Indigenous woman, a well-known artist, stumbled into a Darwin Esplanade hotel, the one that Linda Burney was staying in, and died. The woman had been stabbed in the park across the road, allegedly by her partner. This is just shocking stuff. And when it comes to crime and these other terrible issues in the Territory, we have to face up to the fact that they are a particular problem in Indigenous communities. It's no use avoiding that reality. You can't help to fix this unless you're prepared to be frank about the chronic problems in some Indigenous communities. And you'll recall Peter Dutton and Senator Jacinta Price confronted this in Alice Springs last week. I showed you some of their media conference where they called for a royal commission into child sexual abuse in Indigenous communities.
Well, I've spoken to the police and the social workers, some of whom are out on stress leave at the moment because of the scenes that they've endured. They have kids taking them back into homes where they've been sexually assaulted and 6-year-olds grabbing onto their legs, screaming not to be left there. So they're the people who are on the front line.
I know of children in my own extended family. I know of children in other people's families. Everybody knows what's going on. And I won't be part of the silencing. I know Peter won't be part of the silencing.
The reaction from some activists in the Labor Party was to accuse those coalition politicians of playing politics.
What we've seen over the last couple of days from Peter Dutton in Central Australia is absolutely opportunistic game playing, political game playing, and using the most vulnerable people here in the heart of our nation in Central Australia as a pawn in that game. It's quite frankly a dog act.
Yeah, it's pretty clear who's playing politics here. Political opponents accusing Dutton and Nampijinpa Price of exaggerating the problem and demanding they come forward with detail. And on cue, the ABC took up the same line.
Sticking with the immediate concern for kids, does Peter Dutton, or indeed yourself, Senator, need to report any of this to police? Are there kids right now who are being put in danger?
Look, David, we're not stupid. Peter Dutton is a former policeman. He knows what needs to be done.
Yeah, the coalition politicians are drawing attention to this issue, calling for a royal commission so that the true extent of the problem can be forensically examined. But the response from Labor is not to support the royal commission call, not to endorse this focus on the issue or pledge to do more to tackle it. No, their response is to put partisan pressure back onto those coalition politicians. Those comments you saw earlier from the Territory's Police Minister led to headlines like this, as if Dutton and Nampijinpa Price are the problem here. And today we heard a similar response from the Prime Minister.
I saw Senator Price's interview yesterday. She was given the opportunity to come forward with some specifics and failed to do so. And of course, if there is any abuse, then it's a crime and it should be reported to the police, as a number of people, including Senator McCarthy and the Northern Territory government, have said themselves.
You see, the trouble with all this is that it's so disingenuous. It's just so deceptive and deliberately so. These critics know that neither the opposition leader or his NT senator are going to identify any people or individual episodes publicly for obvious reasons. And we all know that if they have any current information that needs to go to the police, of course, they'll do that privately. Clearly, they're pointing to a crisis and a growing crisis, and they've been sharing some of what they know to help draw attention to the situation. So to pretend this is exaggerated or that it's just a matter for the police, well, that's just a partisan response, isn't it, from Labor and its allies, and it's an attempt to deflect from the issue. And that doesn't work. because there's a problem for those people trying to make that deflection, and it's been detailed, frankly, today by another Northern Territory politician, again an Indigenous woman, but this time a Labor MP, part of Anthony Albanese's government.
A lot of it is child neglect. Now, people might think that that's not important, but that's where you get the really high risk issues happening. So if a child is being neglected, then they are more likely to be at risk of sexual abuse. So we need to unpack all of that and have a look at what is happening with those children that are falling into that category of neglect, because those numbers are increasing, and not just in Alice Springs but right throughout the Northern Territory.
There you have it, Labor's own Marion Scrymgour. Children are being neglected, children are being sexually abused, and it's happening in increasing numbers, and that's from one of Labor's own. Will the Prime Minister just dismiss this now from his own MP and tell her to go to the police with any specifics? Of course not. It's beyond time for the federal and territory governments to forget the partisan point scoring and the deflections and admit there's a problem and tell us what they're going to do to tackle it. By the way, Senator Nampijinpa Price has responded to the PM's calls today for more specifics by inviting him back to Alice Springs, to her hometown, to hear from people on the ground, and she suggested that rather than dropping in for a couple of hours, he might want to stay a night or two. That's a good call. Interestingly, also, his local Labor MP, Marion Scrymgour, says income management is crucial for at-risk children and their dysfunctional families.
Families have got to be managed through that process, and part of it means that they have to be income managed, and not just 50% or 80%, they have to be 100% income managed.
That makes sense, of course, but then Labor scrapped the cashless welfare card last year, didn't they? Anthony Albanese needs to get to Alice Springs. He needs to sit down with Scrymgour and Nampijinpa Price. He needs to meet people, meet the locals, walk the streets and stay overnight and get into the business of problem solving rather than partisan point scoring.